everybody. I guess we'll let a few more people show up, and then we will start talking about using shot plates, little tips and tricks and different ways to use small embellishments. Our impression die spotlight this week is all about small accent pieces and shot plates. We have, I think, like 20 shot plates up or something like that. There's a big amount of shot plates up on the site this week under Facebook specials. So we thought we would do our demo today, showing you how to press these smaller items, what can go wrong. I've got a couple different ways to show you how to hold smaller items when you're cutting them out or when you're filing and cleaning them up. And then we're also going to show you different ways to solder them. So whether you are using these little accents as like an ear wire accent or soldering a post onto them. Hi, Lynn. You get to see you 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, drop a comment and tell us hi so we know who's watching.
Yeah.
Tell us where you're watching from. It's fun for us to see everybody.
We know we had to switch days. Something came up, so
Sorry about that.
Sorry about that. I think next week, hopefully, we'll be back to Wednesdays. But yeah, I think at first we're going to just show you some of the examples that we have. They are all laid out in front of us. These are made with dies that aren't necessarily up for today, but they are small shot plates and accents showing different ways that you can use these small items or these small shot plates. Everything from an ear wire accent like this one. Oops. You can see that. In Minnesota, is that where you're from?
Freezing. Why? Why would you live there?
I moved here from Wisconsin, so I get it.
I don't understand you people. I like it hot. This is an unfinished. This is showing using 2 small accents. It has a little post for these half drilled.
Top drilled, right?
Yeah, top drilled opal drop things from Rio Grande. It's like synthetic opal, obviously.
So very pretty.
These are the ones I showed in the group yesterday. This is one of the tiny accents available right now. Tennessee, I love Tennessee.
These are that are available this week too. The one that is on the ear wire.
I love this one. It's so tiny, but it's so pretty. It would make really pretty little like tabs for a stone. Yeah.
Yeah.
You could set a stone with a few of those soldered around like the edge of a bezel or something. You can solder a post to a little
one of the
accent, and then dangle something. Lots of options. You can use them as multiples. Oh, I should have brought those earrings I have of yours. Why didn't I do that?
I think it's in the graphic that was for this group. So yeah, with these small shot plates, one thing you can think about is grouping a bunch of them together. Just like this one earring, how many is that? 5 of the same design.
Yeah, and they're so fun. Okay, let's see if I can. When they dangle, there's just a lot of really nice movement. And it has such a big impact. Slovakia. Wow. You win the award for farthest away watcher today.
Yeah, so these are some little leaves. They're not the same leaves as the ones that are currently up right now. These are the leaf
so similar.
Shot plate, but they're very similar. They could be used in the same way.
Look at those cute little birds.
I know, little beaks.
Are those gold or brass? I think
those are gold.
Yeah. Annie's a highballer.
Just kidding. It's an old melted ring.
One thing that Annie's also done is she's done some fun accents like this with the pen plating kit.
Yeah.
Is that from Pepe?
That was from Pepe.
Yeah, Pepe has like a pen plater, and so you can add gold accents like that without being a gazillionaire.
Right. Which we have one. We need to set it up.
Yeah.
Do a little demo on that. This is part of a shot plate. It's not one that's up right now, but this design, it wasn't the complete design. So you cut part of it off, use the parts that you want.
But look how much more exciting of an earring that is rather than just a plain ear wire. It totally changes the overall feel and design of the piece, just adding that small accent.
Yep. And there's a little spider one.
Oh my gosh, they're so cute.
And there's a little
That's
cutout
the
on the
little
back.
spider that was available last week. The spider shot plate.
A
Adorable.
little tiny fly on
Annie,
the
you're
back.
ridiculous. These are so cute. If these disappear from the desk, I don't know what happened to them.
Another just post earring, which we're going to show you, right?
Yep.
That's one of the things we're going to demo today.
Yep.
And then also we created a new pattern plate for you for this week.
So this one has small kind of floral star shaped accents. And you can use them as just little decorative elements or as bead caps. So here's the metal after it's rolled. You can cut them out in their little shapes, or you can use our pancake die. I should have measured it. I think it's the 1/2 inch, but
like
this
probably
is the number. And you can, dome these. So here's an example of them being used as little bead caps. The cutout version, sorry, it's not wanting to focus very well. There we go. And then this one I put on the top. So that's a fun new pattern plate that's available starting today. Okay.
All right. So to just jump right in here, the first thing I'm going to show you is how to press these little shot plate dies. It is very easy to overpress when you are using tiny pieces of metal. Like we can show.
I'm guilty. I've done it.
Oh, 100%. I brought an example of a very egregious overpressing. So I like to think of it as pretend you're walking on snow. All right, so this is just an analogy. And you're wearing snowshoes. So your weight, your pressure is spread out over a wide surface area. You're not going to sink down into the snow. Now imagine you're wearing stiletto heels.
That sounds terrible.
It sounds terrible. I wouldn't even be able to stand up. But because your weight then is focused on that tiny little surface area, that tiny heel, you're much easier going to sink down into that snow. So the same sort of thing applies when you're using metal. Like if you are pressing, we're just going to say this, if you're going to press this larger piece of metal into the small design, it's going to require more pressure to get the design than if you are using this itty bitty tiny piece of metal. And there is no formula, there is no amount of pressure that's going to work for one that's not going to work for the other.
So we can't give you a PSI number. Like that's not going to help you.
It will not. It is 100% experimentation, and because it'll depend on the press, it'll depend on your metal, it will depend on
The depth
so many
and size of
different
the
things.
design.
Yeah. So the best advice, and I'll show you this, is to press far or lighter than you think you'll need, and then check your work, and then press a little bit more, and then check your work. I'm going to
And trim.
Yeah. So, but if you keep that in mind, that these smaller pieces, these tiny little pieces, are going to require far less pressure than if you were going to use a larger piece of metal. With the electric, it's really easy to overdo it. here's my example, one of my examples. And you might need to shift it around a little bit.
So can you see that indentation around the design?
That is because I wasn't paying attention and I overpressed it. You can see the design itself is still fine. Like the shot design itself is good and I can still use it, but it is caved in around the outside. And I did a video, gosh, it was probably a year ago, using this exact die, showing you pressing correctly and then overpressing. So this one has a slight indentation around this owl. I'm going to use the same die again, and I'm going to try, it probably won't work because I'm demoing live, but I'm going to try and exaggerate that. But that's a good example. I mean, it is not the only die that I have that I've done this on.
Yeah, and it's depending on the alloy you're pressing, it can happen more easily. Like I have a small die like this that I pressed with 14 karat rose gold, and it dented like this much more easily than it would have if it was sterling, because that metal is so much harder.
Right.
Someone's asking about
like
brass.
10 karat gold.
Yeah, and that's just, it's so hard.
Yeah.
So you have to think about the metal that you're using and the properties of that metal.
You can use brass.
You can. You just have to be really careful when you're melting brass, because brass has zinc in it, and when zinc is brought to its melting temperature, it releases like toxic fumes, and you can get zinc poisoning from breathing that, and you don't want that. So
use ventilation.
Yeah, and like a respirator. Like I would not recommend melting brass in a home studio situation if I were you.
Yeah. So I think first, we'll go over to the press and I'm going to show you how I just very slowly test things. So I'll press it just a tiny bit. We'll look at it, press it, and until we get the full impression. And then I'm going to go full send and show you how to cave in your die. What happens when you overpress.
Yeah. Just one more thing on the brass. Brass is also a pretty stiff metal. It's like, I would say a little stiffer than sterling.
Agreed.
So even if you bought like brass casting grain so that you didn't have to melt blobs yourself, it would be a harder metal. So you'd have to be a little more careful when using it in little tiny shot plates like this, would be my suggestion. I'm gonna wait till you're mostly set up and then I'll get closer.
Okay. Make sure I'm in the right spot. We're gonna use the electric. Because it is a lot easier to overpress with the electric.
You can definitely do all of this with a manual. It just takes longer, and we know you don't want to watch our, well, I'll speak for myself, my flabby arms pumping up a manual press. So, so we're gonna use the electric just to save you guys from us, okay?
Okay.
I'm gonna come, yeah.
Okay, so this is the one that we're going to demo on. This shot plate is not available right now.
Annie's just teasing you.
I'm just teasing you, but it's going to give you, hopefully, a really good visual of what's too much pressure. And it is, like I mentioned before, it is not something that we can give you a PSI or anything. It is definitely, you just want to start slow, start with less pressure than you need, and then slowly work your way up.
You can always press more. You can't unpress.
You cannot unpress. So I'm going to start with this little melted blob of silver. I don't know if it's fine silver or sterling. It's just a scrap blob. And then I'm going to center it in the press, left to right and front to back. So this
and remember, she's not centering the die.
Centering where the force is going to be exerted. So on the metal.
That little chunk, that little blob, that's what's getting centered under the tool steel pusher.
Not the die itself.
Sorry, I moved it.
Nope, you're good. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to, I don't know if you can see, I'm getting down at eye level, kind of off to the side, so that I can really watch when that metal starts to squish. So I'm going to turn it on and I'm just going to barely press it, and then we'll take a look at it to see if we've got all the detail or if we need to press a little bit more. So it's going to get loud. Okay, I know I didn't get all the detail on that, but I do want to just show you how that little tiny touch did get most of the body of this owl.
Hold on. Yeah, but not his little head and not his little feet.
Tail. Yep, so we'll put it back in, register it in place, and then we'll press a little bit harder. Make sure everything's centered. And I am hunched down looking at it. Yeah, you can show
full view.
So I'm looking at it from eye level so that I can really watch that squish.
Bloop. Marnie, that's so nice of you. Thank you for joining us. And you too, Phyllis, I think.
So we got most of it. His little ears and his little toes. Still
hold
need
on,
a little
it's
bit.
hard to see.
Okay.
Blah. You guys see that? We've got most, but not all of what we want.
Yep. And what you could also do right now, you could trim the material from around the owl. You could also anneal it.
If you trim it, just make sure you leave enough.
Leave a lip.
Leave a lip. You always need extra metal, not just enough to take up the impression, but enough to leave a lip so that you can actually get the pressing out of the die.
Yep, exactly. So I'm just going to press it again.
I'm here for the sound effects, Jennifer.
Wait, who's doing this? Me?
It was me. I did a little bloop.
Okay.
It was necessary.
Okay, so we're going to press it just a tiny bit more.
It does not want to focus when it's in there. It's okay.
Are you able to see the detail? Because I know what we see on the phone is pretty different from what you see actually in the live stream. Oh, there we go. Definitely got it. So I didn't look at the gauge. I never look at the gauge, but I bet there's like next to no pressure being exerted on it.
And we got the full detail
owl.
of the die. Okay. I do make weird sound effects. Sorry. Didn't really notice that before. He's so cute.
Oh, thanks, Marty. That's so sweet.
Can we do a demo using copper?
I don't
Yeah.
have a blob, but I bet
We don't have blobs, but we have really thick sheet. Here's, that's not thick
Here's
enough.
some. Let's do it after you do the soldering.
That'll give you a chance to anneal it.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, we will, but it'll be later.
Okay. So does that make sense as far as kind of creeping up on the final pressure? You test it, take a look, press a little bit, check it again. And you'll want to do that for every single piece. Like if you say you needed to make 5 of these little owls, you'd want to do the same process for each one. If you have a gauge and if you're going to be making a ton of these, you could, in theory, pay attention to the gauge, but unless your metal is like exactly the same size, the little blob that you start with is the same size, same temper, everything, you'll still do better if you press a little and then check. Press a little and check your work.
Yep.
So any questions about that? Let's see.
Oh, Jennifer, you're fine.
Oh no.
I'm weird. It's cool. I own it.
One time I took a class and it was a chain making class, and it was in this really quiet room, and we were at a two people per table. And on the second day of class, as we were leaving, my table mate, she's like, I don't know if anyone's told you this, but you make little noises as you're working. She's like, it was really sweet. You'd be working and you'd just be like,
My best friend in high school used to yell at me because we would be like driving in the car, listening to music, and I would be like the saxophone in the background. Even if there was no saxophone, I would just be like,
oh, yeah.
And she's like, Lynette, you are not a musical instrument.
My husband says I play a really good vocal guitar in the car. No self-consciousness. Okay.
What can I say? I'm a joy to work with.
I would agree. Okay, so now we're going to use this bottom owl. And you can
the one that was previously slightly overpressed.
Yeah.
Slight divot around it.
So we're going to even more overpress it. So I'm going to start with another blob of silver.
So the goal here is to show you what happens when you way overpress.
Yeah. So
she's showing you what not to do.
Do not do this. But what I'm going to do is I have my silver and I'm just on the electric press. I'm just going to not even really
full send.
Full send. I'm not going to sneak up on pressing on the pressure. So
do you want to tell them about our presses being set to cut off?
Oh yeah. So our Rincon presses, they're set so that you cannot overpress. How am I going to describe it?
Not dangerously overpress.
Not dangerously overpress.
The pressure cuts off. Change. Yeah.
You'll hear the sound change when it reaches its peak pressure. And that is a safety feature so that you can't just keep going on the pressure. So if you listen to, as we're doing this, you'll hear it go from a rant to a more sound effects. Okay, so here's my little silver. I'm gonna get all nice and centered best I can. And then we're gonna go full send.
So she's just cranking the handle all the way down, not paying attention.
You hear that sound change?
It goes a little more high pitched.
We'll do it one
Listen.
more time. So that's the cutoff. That's built in for safety.
And remember, this is kind of what not to do.
I'll try and pop it out. Okay, so it did it a little bit.
See how there's more now of a divot around that little owl? It's because there's so much pressure in such a small area. It's that stiletto heel pressing into the metal. Our dies are made from mild steel, and so that can happen.
Yep.
If you use too much pressure.
And so to play it safe, if you don't want to mess up your die, press it just a little bit and then look. And then a little bit more. Eventually, you will become familiar enough with the process that you can press and test a little less often. But I still do it with everything that I press, except when I ruin my die.
Except when we're in a hurry.
Except when we're in a hurry.
We should make stickers that say press and test.
Press and test. Actually, that's a good idea. Does anyone have questions about this part of the process as far as pressing these small elements?
Someone's asking, they have an old manual screw press, and
I've never used a screw press.
I haven't either. Kevin will have to chime in on that one if he sees your comment, because he's used the screw presses, but we haven't used those. I would say in theory, I think so. I don't know how much.
It's more of a striking punch rather than a slow squeeze. So
yeah, I was gonna say I don't know the control, what the tolerance on the control for the pressure for those is, but. Do you think annealing will help this some? So if you're pressing solid blobs, they are annealed from being melted. Yep. They're already annealed because they were brought to their melting temperature to become a little blob. So they are already dead soft. If you're pressing with sheet, You can press solid with sheet, especially if you have like a shallow die. You always want to anneal when you're using impression dies.
I'm just gonna go ahead and anneal this copper.
Okay, perfect.
Oh, or not.
So she's got a little tiny piece of copper that she's gonna strike solid in the owl die.
Yep. So I'm just gonna anneal it.
But anneal in between. You could. I don't think it's necessary. Oh. Do you want me to get it?
No,
Sorry.
we're good.
Forgot to turn on the gas. Anneal in between. I don't think there was enough pressure happening for you to need to anneal in between. It's more just keeping an eye and not over pressing. It's not a matter of like the metal becoming too work hardened. It's just such a large amount of pressure in such a small space.
You can't, like, say you're trying to press a really deep die solid, because you can press any impression die solid if you have enough metal.
And enough pressure, which our 20-ton press, like, you know, say you have the anatomical heart die. You're not going to press that solid with our 20-ton press, right?
Yeah. No,
like,
not easily. I think somebody has.
Oh my gosh. You have to be a certain personality type.
Yeah. But you have to consider the weight of the final piece that you're trying to make. So if you're wanting to make earrings and the die that you want to use is a 1/4 inch deep, that's a lot of weight. Like, that's a lot of material to hang from someone's necklace. Or not from their ears. As opposed to if you're making a necklace, it could be heavier.
Hi, Diana. Good morning. How's the pickle working?
Much better.
Good.
Much better.
I made fresh pickle. Sort of.
New to us.
As fresh as it gets around here.
Okay, so this is probably 16 gauge copper sheet. I don't know if you want to hold it.
Stop moving. It's fine. Perfect. And this little owl isn't very deep. So her metal is thick enough to press solid into this design.
So when you're pressing solid, the metal that you're pressing into the die needs to be thicker than the die is deep. So thicker than the depth of the die. And the owl is a good example. So we're going to sneak up on it. I would probably cut this in half. I'm going to go cut this real quick.
Yeah, shear it. Because when you have more surface area to press, you're spreading out the pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Also, whenever you're using impression dies, you want to be using them with one of our tool steel pushers. So here we have the 2-inch round tool steel pusher. We also have a rectangular version that's a slightly better shape for like ring impression dies. Just double check that I got that centered again.
I will.
And no urethane. We're just using metal and the tool steel pusher.
Okay, so here's that copper.
So she's trimmed it down so it's much closer to the size of the impression, but still bigger.
Yep. So I'm going to carefully place that on there. And we're going to do the same process. I'm making sure that it's fully centered underneath the tool steel pusher, making sure that the copper, the spot that I'm working on is fully centered. And I'm going to press a tiny little bit and then we'll check and do the same thing. Just barely touched it.
Diana, you can send us an email. We can answer that for you.
And so that tiny little bit was enough to capture sort of the shadow, the outline of that owl.
Yeah, so not detail yet, but the overall shape.
So put it back in. Oops. Making sure it's fully registered. And then we're going to sneak up on it again. We're going to press it a little bit.
So watch your hand.
barely touching it.
And you do the same thing with the manual. You can feel the pressure a lot more when you're using a manual, which is definitely an advantage in situations like this. Can I hold
so
it?
We got it. And the dye looks good.
And we didn't even need the full thickness of that sheet metal because the dye is really shallow.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect.
I'll try and do the same thing on the other owl with the copper sheet, and I'll go full send with that, just because it's here. So I'm gonna go full send and try and destroy the dye. Okay, full send, here we go.
Copper's so soft though, it probably
Yeah, it didn't do anything. It didn't do anything more.
Copper is so forgiving. It's squishy.
So
Will you show the back, please? Yes. So it's just completely flat because the metal is thick enough to fill the dye and then some.
Yeah. And same with the silver one.
So you have no depression on the back side because we're not pressing with urethane, we're not using sheet. Our metal is taking up all of the space in the impression and then like squishing out the edges.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Any other questions about this part?
What gauge copper? 16.
16 gauge.
But that's going to vary depending on your dye.
Yep. Every single dye will be different.
Yeah.
And honestly, even in our manufacturing process, like you and someone else in the group might have the exact same impression design, and they might be slightly different depths.
We press every single impression die one at a time by hand in the press. And so there are going to be slight variations in depth from die to die.
Oh, Janet, funny you should ask. That's the next part of our demo. We're going to show you how to hold those teeny tiny pieces.
I've got a couple ways that I do it. I don't know if you might want to come around here. We'll see.
Let me start here and then I'll figure out where it's best to.
So I have some pressed that these are actually, all of these are part of the spotlight we have going on.
I really like this shot plate. It comes with these 3 little hoop designs. I might have to get one of these.
This is like my plan. I didn't get a chance
really
to
cute.
finish it, but just solder a post on the back of that top one.
I love how that looks pressed. It's so pretty.
Mm-hmm. So I'm going to show you a few ways that you can hold these small things. So the first way, and the way that I do it 99% of the time, is using my bench pin. Your bench pin.
Okay, I'm going to come around.
Okay. You should feel comfortable cutting into your bench pin. It needs to be modified to work for whatever you're doing.
This is an expendable.
Yes, it is an expendable. It is not meant to be kept pristine. You modify it however you need. I did a video a while back. I'll see if I can link to it.
It's on our YouTube channel.
Showing how I modified these. But you just saw into it. You can use a larger blade. That's probably, it'll be more effective. But carve little tiny, V grooves. Anything that you need, you can file into it, whatever you want to make it work for you. So what I tend to do, I use one of these little notches, and I will, okay, this is weird, but if I know I'm going to be doing a lot of piercings, I will let these 2 fingernails grow out just a little bit. I find that I'm able to more securely hold the piece if I have little fingernails.
You want as much of your metal supported by the wood of the bench pin as possible.
Correct.
So that's what the purpose of all these little V cutouts is. It allows you to support as much of the metal as you can while still cutting into an area.
Correct. So let's see. I'll just pretend like I'm sawing right now. So I will be sawing right in this little tiny V section, and holding my little piece of metal firmly against the bench pin with my index and middle finger. And then I take my thumb and pinch it against the bottom of the bench pin, sort of like a C-clamp. So I'm pushing up with my thumb, I'm pushing down with my two fingers, and you want to go slow when you are first starting out. You're going to start sawing, take a few strokes, hold your saw frame and your blade in position, and then turn your metal. Release the pressure from your fingers. Make a few more strokes. Release, pinch down again. One thing that also helps is getting comfortable turning your saw frame while you're sawing. I know usually you're taught to keep the saw frame in place and move your metal. I find that with these smaller pieces, it's sometimes a little bit more efficient if you turn your saw frame. But the main thing is making sure that your metal is fully supported, and that it is pinched down, it's not moving, it's not vibrating. And you're just making little tiny cuts, releasing the grip, turning. Do you have any other?
Jennifer's asking what size saw blade to use to modify a bench pin. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If you use a larger one, like a number 2 versus a 2/0, the larger blade is going to cut through the wood faster and easier.
You can use a hacksaw.
I have a bandsaw at home, so I'll use that to cut the V, like the larger V in my bench pin, and then I just use whatever's on my saw blade at the time, which is usually a 2/0.
Yep. That doesn't matter.
What size blade are you using today?
This is most likely a 4/0. That just tends to be my go-to. So
whenever you're sawing, your bench pin should be flat side up. Yes. If you are filing, then you turn it to the angled side up. But whenever you're sawing, you should always have flat side of the bench pin up.
So I will finish sawing this out. Chime in, if you have questions while I'm doing this, and then I'll show you a couple other ways to do this. I'm making a few little strokes, releasing the pinch. And don't be in a hurry. I'm not pushing the saw frame. I'm taking very light little cuts.
If you force the blade, you're gonna break it.
100%. And then when I get to the end where I'm about finished, I will put very little pressure on it so that my piece doesn't go flying.
Annie's using our Potter USA saw frame. Sorry, Zoom. I'm not a professional camera person. Can you tell?
So there's one way to do it. And this is how I do most things. You don't need anything fancy, but the main thing is modify your bench pin, and you can make these any shape you want. You could drill even like a larger hole at the center, not at the center, but at the tip of the V. Some bench pins I know you'll see have a cutout circle.
I don't like those.
I don't either, but you can.
Yeah, that's the thing is it's an individual, you make it work for you, and everyone's different.
Yeah.
One thing I will just add is if you have stampings that you're sawing out and you want to cut out an interior space, I would do that first. So cut that little inside space out first before cutting out the exterior. And that's because you have all of that extra metal around the outside edge to help support your piece while you're cutting that little area out. It's so much harder to cut those areas out if you've already removed the perimeter.
Yeah, because then you would have to hold.
So interior
tiny
cuts
little thing.
first.
Yep.
Yeah.
I drilled the hole for that, but I did not do that.
Yeah, she normally does. It's just, not.
When you teach it.
Yeah.
Okay, so the other, one technique, I guess, that you can use.
Someone's asking about this bench pin. Is this the GRS bench
Yeah,
mate?
so this is, the GRS.
Benchmate.
I think you're right, Benchmate.
Bench pin.
Mounting plate, and then which mounts onto your bench. It has this tapered angle that corresponds to the wedges on the back of the bench pin mount, and it just slides and locks into place.
Hello, Australia.
Hello.
We are demonstrating how to use tiny shot plate elements and tips for pressing and soldering and all that. So that's what we're doing today. All right. I'm going to come around here again. So using tiny shot plate elements as little accents on your jewelry pieces. And then Annie right now is showing how to hold these little pieces while you're working with them, cutting them, filing them, etc.
Yeah, so they are super tiny. This next way to hold things, I just played around with it last night. But I went to Harbor Freight, which is super discount tool place. A lot of tools I wouldn't trust from there.
Everything's made in China. It's economical pricing.
Yes. But they have this little set of 3 vice grip pliers. I haven't put this into practice at all. I just tested it to see if it would work.
Because we know some of you guys struggle with holding tiny pieces.
Yeah. So I'm not going to 100% vouch for them yet, but because these are adjustable, you can adjust how much pressure is exerted onto your metal when you clamp it in there. So we'll just do this.
And it clamps down, so you don't have to be holding it with the muscles in your hand the entire time.
Yeah. So I'll try so that it locks it into place, and so then your metal doesn't move. I did have to go into the jaws of these pliers with a diamond disc and modify them a little bit so that they're not finished well.
Not so aggressive.
Not so aggressive, yeah. So I slightly rounded the edges just a little bit. Still kept some tooth on the design, or on the jaws, but just a little less aggressive. So you might want to come around here again. So same as before, you are going to be limited as to where you can hold your metal while you're sawing. You still want your metal to be fully supported by the metal. You don't want to try and saw in the air, because that will you will break your blade almost instantly.
Supported by the wood.
By the wood,
yeah.
Yes. So I'm grabbing the jaws. This is just sort of resting in my hand, and I'm making sure that my metal is supported by the wood. And I'm making You could probably line the jaws with leather too, or tape. I'm not sure. Like I said, I haven't played around with this too much. I probably won't cut out the whole thing, but you can, just as long as your metal is stable and your metal isn't flexing around up and down, it's holding the metal pretty securely. I am moving my saw blade, or my saw frame. I'm turning it, because you are limited you're limited in range as far as where you can move the pliers and still have the metal be in contact with the wood. So you could get to that point. Let's loosen the pliers, and then I'm going to I'll just grab the design in another spot.
Another reason to have a nice lip.
Yep. So this is where we've cut to. I've blocked off like my starting cut. So I'm just going to cut in from the side again. And I'm not pushing hard to where we left off. So
Someone said we should make jeweler's vice grips that don't have teeth.
I feel like these sort of need the teeth because they need to.
I mean, if they don't have anything, then they're slippery.
Yeah. So when I sanded these, or when I ground these with the diamond disc, I didn't polish them up beyond that. They do need a little bit of grit to them, a little bit of tooth. So this is definitely an option. It's working pretty well. You know, it takes some getting used to. You saw me slip off the edge. You could probably modify a bench pin somehow if you wanted, if you knew that you were going to use this technique a lot. Maybe form like a groove for the support. Let's see. Okay, we're just going to get close and then I'm going to break that little tip off. So that, using these vice grips, again, they were from Harbor Freight. You could probably get them from any hardware store, but I thought these were a nice size. So that is one way. And then the last way that I'm going to show is using super glue. And we're going to, here's my little example, super glue the smaller piece onto a thinner, or onto a thin gauge copper or scrap metal. It wouldn't matter.
Like a
which.
larger piece of metal.
A larger piece of metal to hold.
Ugh, I was trying to fit this back in, but it's so tiny. So see how that came from the center there? And it's just her silver stamping glued to a thin piece of copper.
Yep.
Just gives you more to hold on to.
This will probably, this is going to mess up the color of the video too much if we do it on yellow.
No.
Okay, because we can do it on white too.
No.
Okay, so I have this just piece of scrap copper. Which one do you want to do? We'll do this one. So I have super glue. This is, you could use any super glue. This is just what my husband happened to have. It's a super thin. You can use the gel, you can use whatever. But one of the things that he uses a lot and that I use now is an accelerator. And what this does is this makes the super glue cure almost instantaneously so that you can start working on it right away. Probably what I will do, I'm trying to think of the best way to not spray this everywhere. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put...
Want to do it over the sink or the trash can or something?
No, okay. I'm just trying to think if I want to put super glue on here first and then spray the accelerator on the back. We'll just try something. Okay. It doesn't really matter.
Just trying to minimize mess here.
To minimize mess. Okay, so this, you don't need to use one of these picks. These are from just like the hobby industry.
Like an applicator.
An applicator. The little holes in the tip of it hold more.
It looks like a plastic toothpick.
Kind of, but it has those little holes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just going to put some super glue.
I zoomed in too much.
On my metal. And then, let's see, tweezers. Because I don't want it on my hands.
We have lots of demos on the signet ring style dies on our YouTube channel. Go ahead and browse our previous videos.
So what I'm going to do, you don't...
Hold on, I'm zoomed.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and spray the activator or the accelerator on the back of this piece so that as soon as I drop it, it will basically cure instantaneously. I'm going to press that in place. Well, that sure didn't work, did it? I waited too long.
Because you're having to talk and
Yeah. So we're gonna do that again, but I'm not gonna talk. So we'll just do a little tiny bit of super glue. We'll spray the accelerator. And then I'm gonna plop it down. We'll give that a little bit of time to set. The accelerator's amazing. Do I know what's in it? Not really. So it says, yeah, cures in 8 to 10 seconds. So just give that a little bit of time, but it's probably good to go. Yeah, it's not shifting at all. So then, once your metal is attached, then you would just saw this out as usual. But because you have it on a larger piece, you're able to, you have more to hold on to. Let's get in there. You would, again, cut out the inside first, but I'm not going to. And so you do want to keep in mind that when you are adding this metal to the stamping, the metal thickness has increased. So you can use a larger saw blade than you would usually. So the gauge total of the back plate plus the stamping, this is a 4/0 blade. You could probably get away with like maybe even a number 2. But that's just something to keep in mind. If you usually use really fine saw blades, you can step it up and use a slightly larger blade because you're sawing through thicker metal.
So as like a general rule of thumb, when you're using jeweler's saw blades, the recommendation is that you have between 2 and 3 teeth equal the thickness of whatever metal you're cutting. So if you look at your saw blade, there's really fine teeth on it, and the finer the blade, the smaller and closer together the teeth are. So if you're cutting 24 gauge metal, you're gonna need a finer blade, and that's just for like maximum efficiency. You can use almost any blade to cut any thickness metal, but if you use an 8/0 blade to cut through 10 gauge sheet metal, you're going to be there for 100 years.
Approximately.
And you're going to break a lot of blades and you're going to be frustrated. If you use a number 6 size saw blade to cut through 30 gauge metal, you're going to do more bending of metal than you are cutting. So, you know, there's a range, and people get really caught up with like, what size blade should I be using for this gauge? And yes, there are recommendations, but really it's just the smaller the blade, the finer the teeth, the less final finishing you'll have to do on edges. The more detail you'll be able to get with a finer blade. So find one of those charts online. I know Rio Grande has a good one. I'm sure there are others out there.
But don't hold yourself to it as if that is the hard and fast rule. Like, yeah. Okay, so once you have your piece cut out, you can finish the edges while it's attached to the base if that thickness, the added thickness of the backplate, helps you hold on to it more, which is what I did with this one. So I just filed and sanded.
Okay, hold on, I'm gonna zoom. It's really hard to see because they're so tiny, but just talking about filing the edges of these small parts.
And then to get it apart, I just heat it. So you want to, again, make sure that you're using really well ventilated area, respirator. I guess we can show it if you and that's fine. If you don't want to use a torch, you can just throw it in a jar with some acetone, and the acetone dissolves the super glue. Yeah, that's really smart.
I do this technique a lot when I'm doing like marriage of metals, and you need 2 pieces of metal to line up exactly. I'll super glue them together, cut them at the same time, and then just dissolve the glue with acetone. But you can also just burn the glue. Just the fumes are not great, so.
Yeah, so that, you know, it just pops right off.
So now she no longer has that copper backing on those small silver pieces.
There's the copper backings. And the silver. So does anyone have questions about pressing tiny things, sawing tiny things, tiny shots? If not, then we're gonna trade in positions, and Lynette will do some soldering demos.
Yep, I'm gonna show you guys how to make your own post earring parts and then how to solder tiny ear wires to pressings.
Yeah.
Marilyn Southern wants to know why you didn't use urethane when you were pressing.
So when you press something solid, when your metal is thicker than the die is deep, so it's thicker than the depth, you don't need to use urethane.
The metal's pushing itself into
Correct.
the die.
Yeah, let me see if we can.
It's actually, for small things, it's easier to press solid than it
Much
is to
easier.
press with sheet.
So all of the demos that we've shown so far were pressed solid. This is an example of, could be considered a shot plate size, like the scale of it, but because I wanted to make a pair of earrings and I wanted to keep it light, I used thin gauge metal, and with these I did use urethane.
So in that instance, you need the urethane to push the sheet metal down into the die because the sheet is so thin, it can't push itself into the die.
Right.
You need something to push it in.
Whereas when you're using, if you want to press something solid, the thickness of the metal is acting as its own pusher. Does that help make sense?
I think that's good.
Okay.
We're switching?
Yep.
Okay. I'm gonna go around this way.
Okay.
All right. You can, is that helpful
doesn't
or
matter.
hurtful? Better or worse?
We'll try this.
Okay, so the first thing I'm going to show you how to solder like a long ear wire to these little guys. 1 second. To make this style of earring with a little shot plate element. And I'm also going to show you how to make your own posts and solder a post. I don't waste time making my own post earrings. It's ridiculous. Unless I don't have any at home and I need them, then I'll make my own. But I absolutely recommend buying these. You can buy them from any jewelry supplier that sells, findings. They come in different lengths. I think the standards are like 3/8 of an inch long, 7/16 and 1/2 inch. And they also have different measurements, but standard is 20 gauge.
Mm-hmm.
And then they'll have different options where you can have like different sized pads on the end. So I don't have examples here, but sometimes they'll have like a larger disc of metal soldered to the end of the post, and it just gives you more surface area. It makes it a little easier to like prop up and solder on the back of something.
I think this is like a 1.5 millimeter pad because I'm pretty sure that's the kind I buy.
Okay, yeah. So you can buy them with a pad, without a pad. You can buy tiny pads, big pads. I tend to buy the ones with like the smallest pad I can get, but I do like having some pad. So if you need to make your own post, you're going to want to start with 20 gauge round wire. I typically buy for earrings half hard, so that refers to the temper. It's in between dead soft and full hard, and it's just a bit springier, so I don't have to do as much work hardening. Now for posts, that doesn't matter because it's going to get soldered to something, and any temper, any hardness that is there is going to be lost in the soldering process. So I buy half hard for like this style of ear wire, but for post you just need 20 gauge round.
And you're using sterling.
Sterling, yes.
Fine silver is too soft.
Absolutely. not functional for earrings.
Yes. Copper and brass are too, what do you call it?
Dirty?
Allergenic. Reactive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and so with posts, if you'll notice, it's microscopic, so it's really hard to see, but on the very end of that post earring, there's a tiny groove, and that functions as a little channel for your clutch to rest in. So there's a hole in this backing, this friction nut, and when you slide that onto the post, oop, doesn't want to go on. That's weird. Okay. That's because these are from Rio. I didn't make these, so I don't know why it's not going on. Let's try this one. All right, well, the end of this post needs a little polishing or something. There's a little burr holding it up. But anyway, that little channel in the end of the post rests in that hole, so this friction nut won't come off the end, and that's what holds the earring on your ear. So you need to create that little channel if you're making your own posts. And the way I do it is I cut myself a length of wire that's a little bit longer than I need, and I put the wire in the jaws of my number 30 handpiece on my flex shaft with maybe about 1/8 of an inch of the wire sticking out from the jaws.
The number 30 has the adjustable jaws.
Yeah. And then I'm going to tighten that down tight enough that it's holding it, but not so tight that it's going to be leaving marks or marring my silver. And then I'm going to, sorry, I'm right-handed.
Yep. So. Okay, we're going to take you on a journey around. And we'll come in this way.
So then I'm going to take just a regular tapered round nose plier, and I'm going to very gently and slowly spin this wire in the flex shaft, and I'm going to pinch with the end of those round nose pliers, and I'm just going to grip and pinch gently while spinning, and it's going to create that groove. If I pinch too hard, that end will just pinch right off.
Yep.
So you do have to be careful, and I've already created the groove on here, so I'll show you what happens if you press too hard and it just pinches off. Oh, it's not tight.
Yeah, it's she's tightening it just enough to hold it in place, and so there's, some.
So see how easy that was to just pinch off? That's what I don't want to have happen. So that's why you give yourself extra wire though, one of the reasons. So I'm just gonna pull it out a little bit more, and I can do it again. And I'm just gonna be really gentle and go really slow.
Pinched it off.
One more time. Okay, so see that tiny, you need hardly anything. See that tiny groove in the end there? And then I can just take some sandpaper and polish the very end of this post so it's not sharp. But that's all you have to do to make your own post earring. And the easiest way to solder post earrings, if you can do it, is to drill a hole in whatever you're soldering the post to and solder the post in the hole. You get a stronger join that way too, but you can't always do that. So I'm going to show you how to just solder directly onto the back of an impression die pressing. Stamping. And then we'll also take some longer wires over with these stampings, and we'll make this style ear wire as well. So these are available right now on our site as part of a shop plate with 2 other designs. It's really beautiful.
It's really pretty.
This is one of the other shapes on that same shop plate. This leaf which is
Kind of
really
like a
pretty.
split leaf design.
Yeah, I've started making these earrings. I haven't finished. All right, so let's go over to our soldering area.
Perfect. Does anyone have any questions while Lynette's going to get set up with soldering? Lovely. Let's see. Covered earlier. Could I use the dies for these small items if I don't have a press? You can for these small shot plate items. We have a video on our YouTube channel. We'll try and find it. Using like a steel piece of steel bar as sort of a punch and using a hammer. So it is possible with these smaller dies. It is possible for most of the large ones. I know people do use them without a press.
It's a struggle.
Are the pieces hollow inside? No, these are not hollow inside. Earlier in the video, we showed these are pressed with thick material. So either like a melted ball of silver, or thick sheet. I'll show you real quick. So they are solid. All right, let me get into position. Maybe. So what she's done so far is she's applied flux to the back of the stamping and then to the pad of the ear wire.
And I'm using this nasty, ratty old fire brick for this particular operation because my stamping, this little ladybug, it's not flat. And so it'll want to rock if I do it on this flat surface. So by putting it in a little crater in this
broken fire brick,
it will hold it steadier than a flat surface would.
So when your soldering surfaces break, keep them.
Yeah.
Yes, we do ship to the UK.
Okay, and the very first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get a little solder pally in here. This is hard solder that I've already cut up. And I'm going to flow that solder onto the post. So I'm picking it up and then I'm just gonna heat until the solder flows to the post. Okay, and then I'm coming over here and I'm heating up that shot plate element. This torch tip is a bit large for soldering posts. You'll have to be more careful about controlling your heat because it's really easy to melt post earrings. But I really want to focus all of my heat on the stamping, and I don't really need to worry about heating my post up at all because silver's really conductive and it's just going to heat up naturally. And so I'm going to get this piece pretty hot and then I'll just hold my stamping or my post on the stamping and continue to heat the stamping until I feel the solder flow. There we go. And that way you get a really clean join. I know some people have a hard time maneuvering their hands with the torch, and so they want to use a third hand. And you can, but I would still recommend flowing the solder to the post first, yes, and then setting it up in the third hand. If you just set the post up on the stamping and place a chip of solder next to the post, they will solder together, but you'll have a much messier join than if you do it this way. Yeah, whereas here there's no cleanup. So we'll pickle this and then we'll solder the longer ear wire and then we'll talk about like work hardening and whatever.
Yep. So hard solder.
Yeah. So now I don't need this anymore. I have 2 wires here, and it's too tiny for you to see probably, but I filed the ends of them completely flat, and I also filed a flat spot on the end of my stamping where I'm gonna solder the wire so that I can have a nice, clean butt joint with lots of like flat surface area.
Yep. You can actually see it pretty well.
Okay.
surprisingly well.
It's because I did such a good job.
It is. And so it's using a paste flux. Is it Griffin?
This is Grifflux.
Grifflux.
No, this is Dandix. Sorry.
Okay. It's another one of the fluoride-free.
Yeah, it doesn't have the free fluorides. It still has some fluorides in it, but it's slightly less toxic than Handy Flux.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad you're enjoying the demo.
Oh, too much flux.
You mentioned drilling a hole to solder the post. What is the process?
I mean, you literally, whatever you, let me get something.
Yep. It is 20 gauge wire, not 20.
Yeah, 22 is too thin. So say I wanted to make this a post earring. I can solder the post directly to the back, and that's fine. Another way I could do it is I could drill a hole in this piece just with a drill bit that's the exact same size as 20 gauge wire and feed the wire into the hole and then solder it in place. I will have, even after polishing, like a tiny spot that's visible as the piece oxidizes, but if you do a good job on your cleanup, it would be like hardly visible.
Yeah.
And it's an easier way for some people to do it so they don't have to hold the post as they're soldering. It's just held in the hole, if that makes sense.
Yep, it does.
Okay.
I've also, if the piece was thicker, I've also drilled like halfway through.
Yeah, if you do like a solid stamping, and then you don't have anything visible on the front.
Yep. Any recommendations for a good drill? Fordham,
Definitely.
SR. That's the kind of the standard.
It's worth it to invest in a flex shaft. You will use it for everything.
Yes, and forever.
So I've fluxed the ends that I've filed flat, and I've fluxed my stampings. I'm gonna set up 2 little chips of hard solder on my board, and I'm gonna do this the exact same way that I did the post, where I'm gonna flow the solder to the end of my ear wire first, and then set it next to my stampings, and then heat the stamping.
Lynn, either way, either as a divot or straight through, just like we were trying to explain.
And you should be using the torch in your non-dominant hand so that you have full control with your dominant hand for holding your parts. So I've picked up that little chip of solder on the end of the wire, and I'm just going to heat the wire until the solder fully flows to the end of that wire. I'm going to do the same thing with this other one. Ooh, I'm going to drop it on the floor. That's why you don't wear open-toed shoes. Okay, and then I'm going to get these set up.
And zoom in.
Doesn't help that I'm like moving around a ton.
It's okay. I know where you're ending up.
Okay, so I have the pieces touching. And then I'm gonna heat, and as the solder flows, I'll probably just give that stamping a tiny little nudge with my tweezer just to make sure it's like fully
in contact with that wire.
Yeah, because when the solder melts,
the solder is taking up a little bit of space
Yeah.
at the end of the wire.
Thank you.
And so when it flows, you can see she just gently pushed it toward the wire.
But
So now she's checking it.
Yeah, my stamping was a little higher than my wire, so I'm gonna heat it again, and I'm just gonna press down on the stamping a little bit to kind of even out where they're attached. There we go.
Yeah, much better.
Okay, so then I have, it'll be easier to see when it's pickled, but
Just got a complete join.
yeah. And we'll do the exact same thing to this one.
And so by having that solder pre-flowed onto the wire, she doesn't have to worry about placing a little pallion of solder, the parts shifting around and moving. So the solder is already there, it's on that wire, and all it needs to do is flow again.
And something that I always do is I position things so that the wire is completely out of line with the flame. I could have the wire going this way, but then all this heat while I'm laser focused with my eyes right here, I'm melting that wire up here
100%.
without even noticing. So by having it back here, there's no risk of me melting this wire.
Yep.
So think about where you're positioning things and where your heat's going to be directed, and use that to your advantage.
And you saw that pretty well, that solder reflow.
Okay, so we'll pickle it, and then we'll take a look. See how I did.
How long is the 20 gauge wire? It's as long as you want it to be.
Yeah, however long you want your ear wires. I just cut off a chunk for this demo. I didn't measure, but I would say it's probably 2.5, 2 3/4 inches.
Yeah. It fully depends on what your final design is going to be. Oh, your Dremel is fine. If you have a Dremel and it's working for you, good. You have more control and flexibility using a flex shaft. Like, you're not holding a big clunky handpiece.
And it's fully adjustable speed.
Yeah, that's what's nice, is that there's no just on and off. You've got the foot pedal and you can go slow or faster. Is it a good idea to use a small head torch, or would that direct too much heat in one place?
I mean, I'm so comfortable with the torch. I wasn't worried about this one. So this, I think, is a number 1. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're a more beginner solderer and you're worried about it, change it to a 0.
Yeah.
For the post earring, we could have even gotten away with a 0.00.
Right.
But really, if you've learned to direct and control the heat, this torch tip is fine.
Right. It's a lot, well, almost all of it comes down to practice. Like, when I was first taught how to solder, like in my first class, we only had a natural gas torch with a head that was probably about an inch diameter. So huge, but I had to learn torch control really quickly, because that'll just melt everything instantly. Literally. So it's all about practice and controlling the heat. So yes, Diana, we do form the ear wire after soldering.
Yeah. Okay. So now I have this post earring. You can show them that really clean solder joint.
I'm gonna pick it up, I think. Sorry about my fingernails, y'all. Oh, hello, that is my face. Oh no, I'm still there. Hi, everybody. So funny. Let me try it out here if you can see it. Oh, there you go. So you can see there's very, very little solder around the base of that post. Whereas if you had placed a piece of solder next to the ear wire, you would have a big old glob that you'd have to clean up. So this is a very clean way of soldering.
All right, and then we have this really soft post, which is a problem because this gets put in and out of the ear a bazillion times and it needs to be strong. So we need to rework harden this wire, and you can do that just with a flat jawed plier or a chain nose,
Parallel.
anything that's flat basically. And what we're gonna do is we're just gonna really gently twist and work our way up the post, slowly twisting this wire, and the twisting will be enough to work harden. So I'm gonna grab it right down by the joint and just do like a quarter twist. And then I'm gonna move up a little bit and do another twist and just keep moving my way up the post. And you'll find out if you had a good solder joint this way, because if you don't, it'll twist off immediately.
Yep.
But that's important. You don't want to put jewelry out in the world that's going to fall apart for people. So just twisting that a few times will work harden it enough that now it's very strong.
Yep.
And you have your little post earring.
And if you twist too much, it'll work harden too much and it'll pop off.
Yep. And then you get to do it again.
Yep, exactly.
So these now, I didn't do all my cleanup on these little stampings because I knew it would actually be easier for me to hold this piece once I had a wire soldered to it. So now I can go back in with whatever I'm going to use to clean up this part, and I have a handle, which is kind of nice. I won't make you sit here and watch me clean this up. I'll just show you how I would form it into an ear wire. So the way I like to do it is I just use a round nose plier and I make a 90-degree bend right above where the wire joins the stamping. So I've just got a 90-degree bend there. And then my favorite size curve for this curve up here is a 3/8 inch dowel. That's what I typically use. And it just so happens that the back end of a Sharpie is pretty dang close to that. And for some reason, I always have Sharpies, but I never have my dowels. So then I take and I hold the stamping in my thumb and first finger, and I'm gonna pull the stamping and the wire like around that to create this upper curve of the ear wire. And then I can trim it however long I want it. Took my cutters over to the soldering bed.
Of course.
And then I like to put a little like flared end on the back of the end of the ear wire. So again, I'll just grip that with my round nose pliers and just kind of gently flare the end of that wire out. And then I'll use, again, a flat nose plier. See how when you look at this head on, it's kind of wonky from bending. So I'll just use this to straighten everything out. So things aren't skewed. And then I like to work harden it a little further by planishing the top curve of this wire flat and also that tail end. And it does two things. I think it just visually looks a little bit nicer, and it also work hardens the wire further for me, which I like.
You can see how it's flattened a little bit here with the planishing hammer and down at the tail.
So we'll do that right now, and then that's all I think I wanted to show you guys. But we'll show you our ear wire formers really quick too.
So the length, okay, so sorry if you've already answered this. How will I know the length that will fit through the ear comfortably? Are you asking about the length of the overall wire?
So you need to make some practice pieces. Get yourself some 20 gauge brass
or copper.
Wire or copper. I like to use brass because it acts more like sterling. It behaves like sterling. So that's what I make all of my sample ear wires with.
Oh, they're asking, they clarified, for the stud earring.
Oh, how do you know the length? So that's why I was saying kind of the standard 3 sizes. I tend to like them shorter because of the shape of my ears and my head and my neck. If they're the longer posts, they hit me in the back of the neck behind my earlobes and they like itch. I hate long posts. So I tend to go on the shortest end, which is 3/8. But it's also going to depend on how large and heavy your post earrings are. If they're bigger, chunkier, then you're going to want the longer post just for like a little more stability, I think.
Once we're done with the live, we showed how to make that groove on the back of the straight post. So you'll be able to go back and watch that.
Yeah, it was like less than 10 minutes ago.
Yeah. So once we're done with the live, you can go back and watch that part of the live.
So I'm now gonna just planish the top edge of this ear wire and that tail. And I do that with a planishing hammer. I have a 6-ounce planishing hammer that I use at home. This is larger than I would typically use for the purpose, but it's what we have here. Yep. And all that really matters is that I have a flattish, slightly domed, mostly polished surface.
Relatively polished.
Because whatever this surface looks like is what is gonna be left on my ear wire. And then I have this coming off the edge so that I'm not smashing my impression die element. And I'm just gonna gently hammer. And then I would polish this end so that it's nice and smooth for going in and out of the ear.
Yep.
But that's what I wanted to show you guys.
Yay.
So should we show them the ear wire formats really quick?
Sure.
Demo or just?
I think we can just show them the ear wires. We have more detailed videos that we can post in the comments once the live gets published. But we manufacture and sell these 3 different ear wire formers.
So I'll show number 1 first. So this is ear wire former number 1. This is a base that you can purchase separately, and it's a base that can be used with all of the ear wire formers. And so the formers just drop onto the base, and it just helps support it and hold it so that you're not trying to hold 10 different things. If you don't want to buy the base, that's fine. You can put this in like a bench vise to hold it. So it has 2 movable arms for number 1 and this pin. And like Annie said, we have detailed videos showing how to use it. But number 1 makes a very traditional
fishhook style.
Yeah, fishhook style ear wire. Ear wire former number 2 makes a more angular version. And ear wire number 3 makes a kidney wire, which is fun.
Very fun.
And then we have some other formers that are in
process.
Design and design phases. So there will be more coming out, but this is what we have for now.
Yeah.
So you can find all of those on our site, and that's for if you have a hard time making consistently shaped ear wires.
The same size.
These are great because it does most of the work for you, and you can get all your ear wires looking identical.
Yeah.
So that's what we had planned for you guys today.
We'll look at some, just real quick, we'll look at some of the examples that we have. Just as like a closing inspirational post. We'll post the links.
It'll take us a couple hours because the video takes a while to upload to YouTube.
Yeah, but this is an example of a shot plate with a post soldered on the back, and then a ring soldered onto the stamping as well to create a link for a dangle or a drop.
And this is one of our pattern plates.
Oh, it is, yeah. So these are just some other, examples of how you can use these small shot elements. We do have, oh my gosh, I zoomed in way too much.
Oh, sorry.
Nope, you're good.
It's easy to do on your phone.
I know.
It really
jumps.
likes to zoom.
It jumps. So we have a accents and shot plate spotlight going on right now on our website under potterusa.com under Facebook specials. They are going to be available this week, so definitely go check those out. And then also we have the brand new pattern plate, which has multiple sizes of the same floral design. We showed you that earlier. You can
make little bead caps.
Little bead caps, pretty much anything. So does anyone have any questions, any last minute questions about how to use these tiny little shot plate elements. If not, then we're going to go ahead and get off. We will be back next week on Wednesday, probably, around the same time. So we will be doing another demo. We'll announce the topic of it then. So, all right. If nobody has any questions, then we will let you go, and we will see you next week.
You'll be excited about next week.
Next week's good. Bye.